time copy and make sure I don't start to not make sense anymore.
So for the chatter up top here, I'm Kelly Pollock. I'm the Director of Content for Demcast. I'm also a podcaster. So the other night I did an intro to podcasting webinar. So we'll put that video up on our YouTube channel soon. So people can check that out if you missed it. And it was always the plan with Demcast to have a lot of training sessions. That's been built in from the beginning, and it just kept, being a little lower priority than getting everything else about Demcast up and running. But given the current moment we're in, it feels like offering a lot of virtual trainings is probably a really good thing that we can offer. So this was actually scheduled for a while. This one has been scheduled since before we all knew we were going to be housebound, but it was very fortuitous, and we're very glad to offer it. So I am going to largely turn this over to Kim. I'm going to be sort of on the back end, so if you send questions in, if you raise hands, if you could send something in chat, that'll be a little easier for us to deal with. We might do some hand raising and letting people talk to ask questions toward the end, but we'll let Kim get through the presentation first.
Should I kick it off?
Yeah, so I will turn it over to Kim now.
All righty. Oops, let me share my screen here. All right, just sharing my screen, and you should now see a primer disinformation literacy, correct? So is that what everyone's seeing? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. All righty. My name's Kim Snyder. I am a co-lead for Indivisible New Rochelle. I want to welcome everyone here tonight to learning about disinformation. I myself, just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been working for 25 more actually years as a tech whisperer, let's say, an educator for business and nonprofit leaders in the world of technology in my day job, business analysis, digital transformation type of work. And I am a very concerned citizen. And so and that's how I come to the area of disinformation. Just to get us started, I had a couple of questions that I wanted to raise in the poll. Now, Kelly, can you start the poll?
Yeah, okay, launching poll.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just interested to hear, no, wait, do I have to move this, or is this going to cover the screen for everyone?
I think I can move it.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, is that in for everyone? Okay. So I'm just interested in knowing who's with us tonight. Do you use social media such as Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter? And if you do use it, about how often? Like, how would you characterize yourself as a social media user? So that's question number one. And the second question is, have you ever intentionally or unintentionally shared information that is not true? Yes, probably, probably not, or no. And are they able to vote?
Yep, people are voting.
Okay.
So we have about 74% of people have voted if we want to.
Okay, so let's see. It's funny, I don't see the result. Maybe that's because I'm in. So how did that turn out?
So do you use social media? And if so, how often? 83% said yes multiple times a day. 13% say yes at least once a day. Nobody said sometimes but not regularly. And 5% said no, I don't use social media.
Okay.
All right. And then the have you ever intentionally or unintentionally shared information that isn't true? 18% say yes, 45% say probably, 34% say probably not, and 5% say no.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to get a sense of who's out there, just as a matter of introduction. So thank you very much for answering that. Oops. Okay. And just to be honest, I too have shared unintentionally disinformation. It happens to the best of us. So anyway, thanks for that. So let me move on the slides here. Boom. Okay. First of all, a caveat. This session is, when I planned this session for tonight, I hadn't, coronavirus was something that was happening far away. And, and much of our lives have changed drastically in the last week. I live in New Rochelle, which is, a hot spot of it. But that said, I want to issue this warning to everyone who's in this workshop. Panic and urgency cause us as people to be much, much more vulnerable to misinformation, disinformation, scams, and cybercrime. And we are seeing it all over the place, okay? So there is an unreal amount of misinformation, disinformation out there. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to circle back to the topic of coronavirus and just kind of give you an overview of some of what we're seeing. Okay, so I just wanted to start off with that caveat. Okay, so to give you some context about, disinformation, the term disinformation itself is not new, right? Actually, early disinformation campaigns date back to 31 BC. Mark Antony was actually the victim of Octavian's propaganda campaign. He wrote little messages on those coins, kind of little early days tweets there, basically talking about trying to harm his reputation, talking about his relationship with Cleopatra and how he wasn't really loyal and it wasn't really to be trusted. So this is an early example of disinformation. You also saw things, especially once printing became much more mainstream. We're looking there, the Great Moon hoax. Okay, so that was printed in the paper, and and people hadn't been used to seeing fake information in the news. So people assume that anything they see is real, right? So Great Moon hoax, we've got they found life on the moon and they're winged people flying around. Okay, so none of that was true. Those were early examples of disinformation. We will say that the term disinformation really took a turn in 2016, 2015, 16, but we all kind of got to know that a little bit better after the election 2016. And in fact, Robert Mueller and his report basically makes the statement that Russia interfered with our election in a sweeping and systemic fashion, and a lot of that was through disinformation. We can think about what happened in 2016 leading up to the election as very much of a war with information, okay, different type of war. The landscape in this case is social media. And in this social media landscape, it's easy to create a social media account that appears to be a US person. Then a fake person can then kind of become part of a US group and influence US politics from the inside, but actually from many miles away in Russia, okay? So Russia did not attack us outright, like with weapons and on the ground, but they attacked us in a lot of ways by getting us to fight with ourselves, okay? The disinformation campaign in 2016, it consisted of about 1,000, a little more than 1,000 employees at the Internet Research Agency, the IRA, And these were people who were hired. I think they were a lot of young people out of school. It was a good paying job. And many of these folks were involved as trolls that ran multiple accounts, creating content for us here in America. And they were creating it as fake Americans. So looking at the numbers, it was about 126 million on Facebook, 20 million on Instagram, 10.4 million tweets, and over 1,000 videos. And I will say video has a really kind of a lethal format. And people often leave it out of thinking about it, but video is pretty harmful. So for those of you who need some terminology, just to gonna clarify a couple terms that we'll use. So a bot and a troll, and you'll hear these terms used, and I just wanted to clarify the difference. Okay, a bot is software. Okay, a bot is something that automates actions. It can do things like repetitive actions like clicks, likes, and shares. Even some chats now, when you go onto websites and you see a little bubble come up and may I help you? And you can put in a question and it might answer you. That can be a bot. Okay, so bots can be programmed to do things, to recognize certain words and things like that. But a bot is software. And it's important to realize that it's not a person, it's automated. As an automated entity, it can be made to do many, many things very quickly. So it can, a troll, on the other hand, is a person or an account. It's a person or account who harasses others online, or who can be masquerading as a kind of a fake account. We're going to look at some troll accounts, so kind of trolls and sock puppets. And I don't have the term sock puppet up there, but they're used kind of interchangeably. It's basically masquerading as a false account. Okay. Another term that you hear thrown around a lot, and just to give clarity, algorithms. Okay. So an algorithm is a set of instructions or procedures designed to solve problems. Often they're used to perform calculations automatically. Okay. And I'd say when we talk about algorithms, think of formulas that can keep changing and evolving. And these formulas, the thing they do that's makes Facebook and some of the other social media platforms what they are today, is they learn information about you. So their formulas driven by information that are about you, that are about me. Okay, and they're also self-teaching. Okay, so those are just a couple terms to get out of the way. I do want to say this cartoon from 1993 sure ends up being prescient, right? I'm going to talk now, leading into a little bit about kind of how we got to where we are and the environment of the internet. This cartoon was published in the New Yorker in 1993. And, you think about back then, right? They were thinking about, wow, like anonymity and communicating anonymously or without having to see a person. You can get away with a lot of stuff, right? You don't have to know your dog. You also don't have to know like where you're sending, or where this account really lives, right? So anyway, looking at what's happened with how we get our information. Okay, so I'm talking here a little bit, and still giving context, but talking a little bit about the environment of the social media platform. Okay, and this is the sort of the before picture, like how we used to get information, right? Content creators, so writers, photographers, artists, journalists, created content. They created stories, pictures, whatever. Those then got pushed out to what we'll call the gatekeepers, the middlemen, right? And think of those as publishers or producers or curators. There was often a paywall, or literally, right? These were products that were then paid for by people out in the public, and people would get this content in the form of newspapers, books, magazines, media, music, TV, right, broadcast. So, but there was a gatekeeper there, right? The middleman. Where we are today, and when we think about the rise of social media, where we are today is no more middleman. Okay, so there's a fancy term for that called disintermediation, and that basically means no more middleman. Okay, there's no more gatekeeper, and so the person sitting in their living room has access to tools that are actually pretty affordable. You don't need a lot of stuff now. You don't need a bunch of movie cameras to shoot a film and a whole editing suite. You can do that on a phone, right? So you have people can generate content and then push it out to these various platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, these various platforms, which then are means for that content to get out to the public through their various channels, right? And in the early days, the internet, was seen as really providing, opening up the doors of communication, providing access to all this information, providing everyone with information access, right? The great democratizer. When we were sort of in our honeymoon with the internet in the early days, it was wonderful, right? However, we've started to see it turn, and that's partly where we are now with disinformation, right? When we think about the incredible amount of change that's happened in a really short amount of time. Okay, so in 2007, so 12 years ago, we saw our first iPhone. Okay, that was a game-changing device. In 2006, Facebook became publicly available. The early days of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, 22 years old or whatever. And that was not that long ago when you think about it, right? 2007, 2006, and how much this has become part of everyday life all around the world, right? If you think about Facebook being a country, right? People refer to it as Facebookistan, right? If you think about Facebook as a country and it currently has 2.5 billion active users as of January. So if that was a country, that would have the same population as 7.64 United Stateses, plural, right? And 1.4 China's. So that's a lot of people. So that's a lot of people on a platform all the time, being able to both produce and get content, right? But we're going to take a little bit of time and think about how do they get that content, and what is that they're, how is it that they're seeing? How is it that I'm seeing the content that I'm seeing, right? Facebook, while it, it's a place that we can publish freely and we don't have to pay anything to get our accounts, Facebook is, do not forget for 1 second, Facebook is a business. It's the attention economy. And on a platform like Facebook, attention then is the currency. That's what they want. That's what they want. They want you to look more. The longer you look, the more value that has to the economy of Facebook. Okay, and that's basically what drives it, right? So it's a viral sharing platform, and now we are only too familiar these days with coronavirus of understanding viral sharing, right? How things get spread from one person to their next people, to the next people, to the next people. It's a platform, it's an advertising platform as well as an information platform. It makes its money through advertising, through things that people pay for. And and its messages are then ranked and spread about. So they're built to share information on a massive exponential level, right? I was talking a minute ago, 2.5 billion users worldwide, right? But while it's massive, people end up sharing to their own crowds. I'm going to talk about a couple of people next who I think are really, really helpful and have taught me a lot through their work. And if you are interested in exploring this topic, there's a website. I had the URL on the first slide, but I'll also give it at the end. Disinfo.com, and there are links to all of these people and their work. And if you're interested in learning more about different aspects of disinformation and these viral platforms, I really encourage you to check them out. So Renee DiResta, we were lucky to have her. We did an Indivisible kind of collaboration last summer in June, and she coined the term, if you make a trend, you make it true. Truth does not matter, right? Renee, I should mention, was one of the researchers who reviewed the social media posts that came from the IRA group in Russia. So she reviewed and researched that for the US Senate Intelligence Committee. And so she looked at a lot of those posts and looked at how they were used and how they were spread. Okay, and this is a quote from her, and it's, again, a little too real for today, but she talks about the term virality. It's an allusion to epidemiology. Information spreads throughout one cluster of people and then expands outward to others who spread it among their own clusters and so on, right? It's the compelling content that keeps people on the platform, and seeing one's content go viral keeps people creating it, right? So it's a self-feeding mechanism, right? You want to get yourself out there. Does someone have a question? Okay. Anyway, so, Renee talks about how, well, here, actually, let me show you in this next slide. So here's an example, all right? So kind of, there's a lot going on here. We're going to start at the very top of my mouse. Yep. Okay, so here's an example of something kind of going viral and taking a life of its own, right? So somewhere in the Bronx, this is true, this is the Nancy Pelosi video. Somewhere in the Bronx, a Trump supporter alters a video of Nancy Pelosi. Actually, initially he saw the video of her and he said, hey, she kind of looks drunk, to himself. And then he actually slowed down this video to 75% its normal speed so that she really did look drunk, right? And then he posted it to the different platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and then the video took off, right? It took off because of who else posted it. Again, we're thinking about virality and who can get it out there, and the attention, the attention economy. So certain people post stuff, everyone looks at it, everyone passes it on, it gets a lot of attention. Okay, so Chuck Woolery, who I didn't realize was, I think it was the Wheel of Fortune. He was one of the original hosts. I guess he turned into a conservative personality out there on social media. So he pushes out video, he tweets about this. It's got a lot of likes here, 46.8 thousand likes and a bunch of retweets, talking about her alcohol bill, when she flies from San Francisco to Washington. Okay, Rudy Giuliani, right? He also has a huge following in the conservative alt-right crowd, right? And so he saw it and is, what's wrong with Nancy Pelosi? Her speech pattern is bizarre. Okay, so that video was actually found out pretty early on as being, faked. So Twitter actually took it down, but then Facebook did not remove it, okay? And Facebook's not wanting to remove it actually really propelled it. And then it really made news, okay? So And as it's making news, Trump sees it on Fox. He tweets about it. It makes even more news. And then all of a sudden, in the mainstream media, okay, mainstream news, the news that lots of people are getting in print, on TV, on the web, right? Washington Post, all these, they end up covering this story. Now, they end up covering it as, oh my God, there's this fake video of Nancy Pelosi looking drunk. And then Facebook won't take it down, blah, blah, blah. However, a lot of us, probably everyone on this call, I don't know for sure, but knows about that video and knows about the drunken Nancy Pelosi video. And that's, how it became in the mainstream. Okay, that became a meme then on the far right. Okay, so Renee DiResta talks about these the mechanisms underlying the systems in which this type of content can get propelled, come out of nowhere, come out of some apartment in the Bronx, get propelled and get amplified and get pushed out there, okay? So when you think about what is it you're seeing next, right? Those are the algorithms that are underlying the platforms, right? It's an attention economy. So it wants you to stay there longer. The algorithm, the platform, it is going to feed you up stuff that keeps you there longer, okay? What you have also are filter bubbles, okay? Eli Pariser, and there's also his video on the website, okay? He was the first person to really coin the filter bubbles. He worked for Move On, and in his work, in early days, in 2011, he started to notice this trend that the stuff that he was seeing on his feed was different than the content that other people who didn't share his political beliefs were seeing on their feeds. And like, wow, I don't really have any choice about this. This is the algorithm feeding me this stuff. Remember, the algorithm's purpose is really to keep us there longer, right? And so, on the one side, I can see my stuff, the stuff I like, the stuff I respond to. If I only went on Facebook and saw people I disagreed with, like a steady flow of their content, or even a real-time flow of content, like I may not stay there as long as if I'm fed content that I respond to and react to, right? And we are all like this, okay? There's all the stuff that makes, us, that we're gonna react to more, that we're gonna comment on, we're gonna share, we're gonna like it, okay? So you end up getting into this situation where there's my feed and then there's the other feed. There's a person that I don't necessarily agree with, their feed, and we're not seeing each other's stuff, right? I'm just seeing my stuff. So you wonder how we get into this hyper polarized world, right? Tristan Harris is another person I just want to introduce everyone to his work for the Center for Humane Technology. He worked early days at the Stanford Persuasion Lab. So this was when they were first building out these algorithms, and these systems for these tech platforms were brand new. And he was very disturbed by what he was seeing and what the motives seemed to be, right? And here's one of his quotes, right? Today's tech platforms are caught in a race to the bottom of the brainstem to extract human attention. It's a race we're all losing, all right? I really encourage, and there's a link to this on the website, anyone who is interested in this and interested in the phenomenon of social media and kind of how it's affecting us as a society and a culture, to listen to the podcasts that come from Center for Humane Technology. I learn amazingly thoughtful stuff every single one I listen to. Okay. So now we're getting into the thick of the disinformation. So we're going to look a little bit at the stuff from Russia, right? Important to remember, whatever I talk about, whatever this content says on the surface of it, it was not necessarily stuff from Russia was not necessarily pro-Trump or pro-Republican or Democrat. It was really about disrupting our society from within, right? Its goal was to further existing wedges, right? They studied our culture. They were studying it in 2014. People came over here and really got to know America. They got to, in some ways, they got to know America better than America knew America. And you know, the goal was really to sow chaos and division and drive a wedge where they could in our society, right? So how did they do this? So they created, so these are the guys over in St. Petersburg. Okay, so these were they were based in the Internet Research Agency. These are the people that Renee DeResta studied. These are the accounts. So you see these accounts with names. You know, Tennessee GOP, LGBT United, Blacktivists, Daily News Denver, right? These are all very American sounding, you know, Dallas Top News, New York Dems, March for Trump. Okay, these were all Russian created accounts. Some of these accounts had entire, had Facebook pages, Facebook groups, you know, websites, Twitter accounts. Some of them had stores and sold things and did transactions. Okay, so, and some of them had like hundreds of thousands of followers. And let's take a look at an example of what they were able to do from over in Russia. So you have the Heart of Texas, Russia created, appeal to, you know, the far right folks who want to secede. 253, well, it's close to 254,000 people like this. Okay, so that group had a lot of followers. And on the other hand, you had United Muslims of America, another, and a lot of these groups, a lot of the fake troll accounts, worked off of pride, right? They pride and identity. They studied Americans, and so the United Muslims of America had 328,000 people liked and followed their page. Okay, so these are Russian created groups. All right. So on May 21st in 2016, there was actually the opening of a library, I think, in the Islamic Cultural Center in Houston, and so the folks from the Heart of Texas over here, they planned a rally at 12 p.m. on Saturday, May 21st, to stop the Islamization of Texas. Okay, so this was their demonstration to do this. On the other side of the street, the United Muslims troll created group was going to have a rally to save Islamic knowledge. Okay, so these were two opposing groups kind of staged to basically have opposing rallies on the same street corner. How did they pull it off from however many thousands of miles away St. Petersburg is? Well, you know, they had become part of this community. They were organizers in the Heart of Texas group, or the United Muslims of America group. And, you know, when you're organizing something, and this has happened where, you know, hey, I can't actually be there for the event. Can you help me out? And so they, you know, they could get people who are actually here, who are groups, who are friends, who they had friended on Facebook. Hey, can you just be there and just organize? There's going to be about like 40 or so demonstrators. Just be there and make sure everyone shows up. Okay, so they were able to coordinate this from very, very far away. And on May 21st, 2016, there you go. Right here in America, in Houston, there are these two opposing groups. They made it onto the news. All right. So this was about driving division. This was about bringing two groups together that they knew would clash. And isn't America falling apart from the inside? So that's part of that that narrative that they're trying to, it's about destabilizing, right? Causing chaos. As far as the election goes, they drove it from the two different sides, right? So on the one hand, the folks on the conservative right-leaning, the people that would appeal to the conservative side, they fueled all that rage, like the anti-immigration, the hyper-religiosity, close the borders, Hillary, voting against Jesus if you vote for her. On the other side, on the left, right, they tried to encourage apathy about voting, not trusting Hillary. They really, they really worked the wedge, the Hillary Bernie wedge. Okay, if they encouraged third-party voting, vote third party, they pushed this content. And finally, even on the day of the election, don't go to the polls, vote by text. Okay, it's important when we think about this. Clinton lost by, I don't know, was it 78,000 votes across 3 states? So when you have all of this content and noise coming, and some pretty smart targeting of this content, you got to think that this must have played some role, right? So as we head into 2020, I'd say yes, there is stuff coming from Russia for sure, but and other places, Iran, but the 2020, the really lethal stuff in 2020 is coming from within our own borders. And I don't know how many of you who are listening are familiar with Brad Parscale. There's actually a recent Atlantic article about the $1 billion Trump disinformation campaign machine, okay? Brad was Trump's 2016 social media director. He kind of came from nowhere. He met Eric Trump on an airplane, and he befriended him, and lo and behold, he started working for Donald Trump and making, nothing $10,000 websites. Okay, that morphed into his becoming the social media director for the campaign, and now 2020 his campaign director. This guy is really smart and has no bottom, none. If you read the Atlantic article, and there's a link and a little blurb on that in the news part of the Disarm Disinfo website, you'll get a sense of where he's coming from. Okay, so that's who's driving it. He came from a marketing background. That he did not come from politics. Okay, the types of stuff that he did then and will be doing again. Okay, because he is driving the whole thing, and his thing is digital, right? So micro-targeting negative ad campaigns. And when I say micro-targeting, I mean Facebook targeting. The Facebook platform allows you to target ads to very, very specific groups of people by geography, by the things they like, by the pages they've liked. So, someone who lives in X county who follows the NRA, show them this type of content. So show them this type of message, right? Someone who had, like Bernie Sanders, lives in this county, in this area that's purplish, show them this type of content about Hillary not being trustworthy, etc. So very, very micro-targeting. And you can micro-target people on an infinitesimal level. Okay, it's pretty amazing as an ad platform, but the data is extremely rich, and it keeps getting richer. But for ads like this, you can really do a lot of damage. Important to remember that this information thrives where there already is division, right? So the stuff around build a wall, no human being is illegal, right? Another one, it targets different candidates on issues. There's a lot of it, another, point of division around reproductive rights. And so disinformation and this kind of negative, ad campaigns are really going to focus on these things. Because you know what? On that attention machine, on those platforms, right? This stuff gets reactions. This stuff gets us angry. This stuff gets us talking. This stuff gets us commenting, right? We also have people on the right, alt-right, I'll call them social media personalities or self-created social media personalities. Mike Chernovich is an example of one of these, okay? He literally invented Hillary Clinton's her poor health and stamina and lack of stamina. Trump might have been yammering about that, but this guy on the social media landscape literally he got it in his head to really focus on this and just drive it home and beat it to death, right? She's not healthy, blah, 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 right? So that was his thing. You know what? In 2020, we're starting to see Chernovich again, though he's starting to focus on, Joe Biden, his mental health. If you're your parents, would you take away his car keys? So he's again trying to drive this. This guy has a tremendous following. That's all he does for a living is social media. Like he's like sitting in his empty living room with his iPad and a phone and a laptop, churning out this stuff with tons of followers, okay? That's who we've got pushing out disinformation, right? And I also want to say very much a white supremacist and very anti-woman, okay? So social media influencers, so people like Mike Chernovich, though there are many of them, Rudy Giuliani is another one, Donald Trump Jr., okay, he's another influencer. So these people push out stuff and they can really influence the conversation online, right? The good news today is there are different people, and this one, the Conspirador Norteño account, right, is really good at following this stuff and spotting these trends and saying, oh my God, look, X, Y, and Z is trending on Twitter. Wait, look who's been pushing it out. And there's a tendency that we have to blame bots. Like, oh, if we see something crazy trending on Twitter, and we want to say, oh, it must be the bots doing it. Well, actually, less so. I mean, sometimes it's bots, sure, but often now, more so, it's in the United States, it's people that have a tremendous amount of influence and a lot of followers who can, tweet garbage, and people will follow it, and it makes a lot of noise, and sometimes it makes it into mainstream news, right? Like the Nancy Pelosi video, all right? So that is another aspect of it. Another part of disinformation is how it gets all this traction and attention, right? Another way that kind of disinformation happens is, and there's more infiltration of our communities, and in fact have seen a few indivisible troll created sites. The thing that's scary to me is not that they're there, it's the number of followers, and knowing that a number of these followers are they're Americans, they're well-meaning people. This stupid, the fake one in the middle here, they collect donations on their website. So I don't know how many people have given money. And you think about thinking back to the Houston demonstration, right? If I were a troll from very far away and I was trying to get people to enact a rally for me, right? Who am I going to pick? But I'm going to pick like followers. I'm going to pick followers who gave money, because these are like true believers. And so there's a lot of that. That's how they build it. You can build a community from afar. That said, they don't necessarily need to be doing this from Russia anymore. Okay, so these communities could all be United States. It could be Brad Parscale's buddies. Okay, There was a March on Washington back in September. A lot of stuff. They play on Antifa a lot, the anti-fascist movement, because people like the far right likes to blame Antifa for violence, actually. And that's a real point of division, a real hotspot. So, and you just want to pay attention to the types of things, it's hard to, people will ask, so how do you know? How do you know it's fake? One of the things is I often look at the graphics, and if they look really generic, there are ways to trace graphics back to see where they've been used before. And on the website, there are specific instructions for how to do that. And that's one of the first things I'll often do if I think like, wow, that just looks fake. Okay, so just beware, especially when you see things where you don't know the source, you don't know the person who started it. You don't just, I don't know, be wary. Okay, another thing that we are seeing, and talked about this with the Nancy Pelosi thing, deepfake, and actually in this case, they're both what we call shallow fake, because they're actually no artificial intelligence needed here. The Nancy Pelosi video, and I've been seeing a bunch of stuff around Joe Biden. Again, it's faked through editing with him. I don't know that they've necessarily slowed anything down, or maybe actually they have in this one below. But this top one here, they pulled certain quotes, and you can edit something to completely change the meaning of what someone's saying, depending on what part of the conversation you get, right? They also, I think they did do the slowed down video of Joe Biden. This is new though, right here, manipulated media. So this is actually pretty brand new within the last few weeks, I think. So this is new. They did hear feedback, I hope, that they should make this manipulated media bigger, because I don't know if that'd stop anyone in their tracks. Doctored or altered photos are another super easy way to completely change the context and create, disinformation, basically, right? So the implication, this is when Mike Bloomberg was posting all these ads about how Donald Trump cheats at golf, I think in Vegas when they had the primary, right? And so then you saw this stuff, oh, okay, Mike Bloomberg and Trump and Rudy, they're all actually good buddies, right? No, that was actually pulled from a picture, and they were at a charity event, fighting domestic abuse. And there was Bill Clinton and Joe Torre and Billy Crystal. So it wasn't what it seemed. It wasn't like Mike going out with Donald Trump and Rudy to, shoot some golf balls. All right. We're seeing that actually these sites have been up for a while, but another form that disinformation takes is fake websites, right? So they're called parody sites, but that's kind of too polite a word, I think, almost, because they're really driving at things that people like to kind of pick apart about these various candidates, right? So there's fake websites, and they both have stores, you'll note. You can shop at either of them. Joe Biden's t-shirts from the fake one, because he announced his candidacy late. So I think they actually sold out of his t-shirts. And but yeah, you can buy things on both of those. These sites are both run by someone like a consultant who works in San Antonio, which is also where Brad Parscale's social media offices are based. And they works for a consultant. The consultant has worked for Brad Parscale's company in the past. So one could only imagine that Brad is aware of this and may have put him up to it. Okay, another type of disinformation that you'll see, this is really kind of insidious, okay? So this is, let's see if I can explain this correctly. So this was, playing off of whether or not Elizabeth Warren resonates with African Americans, right? So, and again, remember, they're trying to drive wedges and points of potential division and exploit them, right? And so, so what happened was the person who created this disinformation was faking, so pretending to be an Elizabeth Warren supporter who was doctoring something. Okay, I hope you can follow me on that one, right? So, so this image on the left here got posted by someone who was actually a troll pretending to be an Elizabeth Warren fan, so a fake fan. But the picture was actually very well known and the person was well known. And so that was really easily debunked. So then it makes it look like Elizabeth Warren not only has trouble resonating with the African American community, but lo and behold, there are these fakes. Okay, so this is really insidious. And again, I don't think this is Russia doing this, okay? Another form of disinformation that we're seeing an awful lot of more recently is actually comes in the form of fake local news. So, you know, we all know that over the last, you know, decade or so, we've really seen a lot of closures among local news companies, right? And yet at the same time, people tend to trust their local news sources more, right? Because they're local, they're at home. But actually what's happened in a lot of places throughout the country is there's actually a company that's owned by a conservative group called Locality Labs. And what they've done is they've created fake local news sites. I don't know what else to call them. That's what they are. So Battle Creek Times is, you know, Battle Creek, Michigan. No, it's an actual place. But what they do is they kind of plant and seed information that really pushes that the conservative, you know, point of view. And it also they'll also do things like, say a candidate's coming to town, say a candidate's coming to an area like Battle Creek, right, near Battle Creek, right? And it's the new Democratic, you know, candidate who's, you know, hot stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you'll start to see articles in the local newspaper criticizing or critiquing that candidate who's about to come to town, right? And so in that sense, you're driving negative attention from a supposedly trusted source. So this is an example of using local news to kind of build on that trust that people might have, but actually spread, you know, disinformation, dishonest information. Okay, one last kind of type of disinformation I'm going to talk about. This is also relatively new, peer-to-peer texting. So, you know, and a lot of us have done peer-to-peer texting. We've used these platforms from supporting some Democratic candidates. You know, this was used a lot in 2018. I'm sure we're going to use it again 2020. However, you know, we say Democrats invent and Republicans perfect some of these technologies, and this keeps happening. Democrats were actually ahead of the game on this type of social media, even going back to Obama. But Republicans have continued to kind of take these technologies and take them one step further. So this guy, Gary Cody, has created this group, Open Sesame, that works directly with the Trump campaign, and it's a peer-to-peer texting application. It does a lot of dark texting, right? So attack ads. They're also capable of targeting, potentially targeting Democratic voters with incorrect polling information, right? Again, these are very data-driven platforms, so you can pick people based on their polling location, their election district, things like that. So this is just another form of disinformation. I hope I'm keeping okay time. Okay, all right, just my time check. All right, so types of information disorder. All right, so Clara Wardle, who's one of the first people out there to really, I guess, codify the language around disinformation. Okay, so you have, let's just talk about these differences. There's misinformation. Oh, I need to move. Okay, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Okay. Misinformation is stuff that's unintentional, that you see something that's a mistake in the newspaper, somebody's name isn't printed incorrectly, or their age is given wrong. It's misinformation. It's unintentional, right? Disinformation is incorrect, but intentionally so. So it's all about the intention of it, okay? Malinformation is, we're gonna get to that a little bit with some of the stuff around coronavirus at the end, but that's like WikiLeaks. That's like kind of illegal criminality, okay? But for the most part, we're talking about the stuff in the middle here. Intentionally wrong information. Okay, so we think about, is there time for this poll? Yeah. We think about misinformation or disinformation, and this is actually someone I saw at a town hall in Yonkers. So this woman, and we could, Kelly, for time, we could go ahead and do this poll quickly. So this woman had this sign: some vaccines are manufactured, right? And she's anti-vax, right? Is this, and this is a question for the poll, what do you think this is? Is this misinformation or disinformation? And just quickly, just your gut. So you got results?
Yeah, so we're at right now 32% of people say misinformation, 65 say disinformation. So they're
Okay.
roughly steady around those.
Okay. That's interesting. This is a toughie, and this is, you know, these are the topics of conversations actually that we'll be, I guess we'll be having, I was gonna say over coffee, but maybe more, more over Zoom calls these days. You know, this is hard to tell. There's a lot of disinformation out in the anti-vax world. Renee DiResta got her start in this field by looking at this stuff, actually. However, you know, she believes it with all of her heart to be true, right? So this is a hard call, right? You know, a lot of us do think of this as disinformation, but what is her intent, right? So I just want people to think about it. These are the things we wrestle with when with true believers in disinformation spheres like anti-vax. Important thing to remember with this, okay? Is it true? Is it false? Right? A lie told once remains a lie, but a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. So it becomes, how much do we hear this, right? And one thing we want to realize here, and this is hopefully talking to a group of a lot of people in indivisible groups and pretty active people. Okay, the right, however, dominates coverage. Okay, and we're looking at right now stuff around anti-abortion stuff. Right-leaning websites, oh my God, there's so many more of them. Okay, this is looking at, this was, you know, about abortion-related coverage. Okay, the right pushes out a ton of content, right? Remember that disintermediated content, right? The left, not so much. There's even, this is like the non-ideologically aligned stuff in the middle, all right? Anything's real, and, you know, it can gain traction just from there being more of it out there, okay? And here's an example of something that happened when here in New York, when we passed the Reproductive Health Act in January, right? And we were thrilled. Tons of us had worked, we had knocked doors. This was such an important legislative victory in our state Senate. However, what was all over the place on social media was the far right, right? We're in the midst of a spiritual battle, late-term abortion is now legal, etc. So there's all this content out there. There wasn't the same amount of content on the left saying, isn't this great? You know, this law is passed, a woman's, you know, right to choose, etc. You know, control of her own body, etc. No, a lot of the noise was coming from the far right. And lo and behold, later on, CBS even mistakenly, now they did take this down, but they ended up publishing something about, New York has a law allowing abortions right up to the baby's due date, right? So this is part of that disinformation, right? So, and this is just based on sheer quantity, and it was out there. They are also highly, highly coordinated, right? This is Lila Rose. When she was 15 years old, she started this group Live Action, anti-abortion. She's now 31 and has a gazillion followers on Facebook. Okay, however, Facebook did flag her video. Abortion's never medically necessary. That's actually not true. And they flagged that as inaccurate. Facebook is trying to do a little bit better on these things. But Live Action, with all their gazillion followers, they push something out there. They have been, they're being censored, and the outrage of it, right? The abortionists are profiting from this or censoring us. And then, of course, ends up on Fox News. And then they get it in the hands of, some senators or Ted Cruz, and then who goes to Facebook, and then Facebook takes down their fact check. And they did the right thing. But the question is, the right is so well coordinated. Where are we, right? Where were people to say, thank you, Facebook, for taking down that piece of incorrect information? Because that's not true, right? So we've got to make a little bit more noise, right? So that gets us to, how do we start to fight back, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about fighting back as individuals, and then kind of individuals in the community, as part of a community. All right, so the first big thing, always pause before sharing something. Even if it's really tempting, especially if it's really tempting, especially if it makes you want to just share it, okay? Pause. Make a commitment to always read something before sharing, right? This cartoon, right? Did you check before reposting? Well, I didn't need to. It agrees with my preconceived views and biases, so it must be true. That's how we end up pushing out disinformation every once in a while. I've done it. We've all done it. All right. This polarizing content is, it's trigger. It gets us, it kind of bypasses the brain and goes straight to the gut. And then we slam it out there. And then all my friends also get pissed off and slam it out there to their friends, etc. And that's how it goes more viral and gets pushed out and gets more attention and traction and becomes, in the Facebook economy, more valuable as content, right? And you think about these as outrage triggers, right? And they get shared more. We share rage and disgust, okay? So here's another thing. Friends don't let friends share disinformation, okay? So if you ever see a friend who shared something, and you kind of look at it and it's like, I'm not sure if that's right. You don't necessarily have to call them out on, the comment for that post. You can private message them and say, did you check the source? I think this might be overstating something. You can also, in someone's comments, say, you know what, here's a fact check on this. I don't think it's actually true. And again, it's not really blamey or, you're not trying to make someone feel bad. I want them to think, like, I would want if I was sharing something that was wrong, I would want someone to tell me that. All right. The wisdom of the crowd. So this is how we as individuals can be part of, a bigger change. Avaz, which is a group I've gotten to know and actually have reached out to the person who directed the anti-disinformation campaign in 2019 in Europe. And they actually had some real success. And in terms of taking down content that potentially could have had a ton of reach, okay? And they worked in 6 different countries in Europe and had some real success in terms of reducing some of the noise and that potent, disinformation around the campaigns and the elections that were held in 2019. That is a big deal, okay? And that's a model that would be good for us here in the US if we could somehow coordinate something like that it would be good for us to start to look at how we can leverage each other and the wisdom of our own crowd, right? Another thing we can do is with our elected officials, okay? And a lot of us probably on this webinar have, you know, we contact our legislators, we help get them elected, we talk with them, we, you know, talk about the issues that we care about. Technology needs to also be one of these issues that our legislators care about. A lot of them don't know about technology. You know what? It's okay to not know. It's okay to know what you don't know. And that means you just need to get someone in there, one of your aides who does know about it. It also makes us think about some of the people that we might want to, you know, campaign for. How important is technology to them? You know, artificial intelligence is eating us alive. So we really need to think about people who have wisdom in that area, right? And when we think about new people that are running for open seats. Fadi Quran, who is the Avaz anti-disinformation campaign leader, I heard him in an interview saying how he in the United States, we're so lucky that our legislators that actually could possibly have some influence over the social media platforms, much more so than for someone in another country, because these companies are American, right? So if we can affect them, we could probably do that, have a greater chance to do that from within America, right? So his thing is to call upon us to then call upon our legislators to say we want Facebook, Twitter, and Google to correct the record and properly inform the public when we do, okay? And we want our legislators to do that. Okay, so artificial intelligence can do a lot. These platforms could be smarter and more decent, right? Remember spam, right? Remember all that? We said Viagra in our inbox. I mean, we don't see that anymore. Okay, so that's a way that with email delivery, correct, you know, it can correct the record, it got rid of some noise, right? But these systems are capable of using artificial intelligence to pick up bad content. So here's an example that Avaz had for correcting the record, and they created factbook.org, and you can go online and see it. It's just an example site. But here's like a fake, you know, fake information. You know, Greta, you know, she's the highest paid, you know, environmental activist. What's fake information, right? So Factbook, so if Facebook were actually flagging false content, instead of, you know, making it so easy to read, they would actually gray out the title. You'd have to click on it. It's labeled false information. It's not about censorship, right? That's where a lot of these arguments really spin out, is around freedom of information, right? It's free of self-expression. And this is not so much censoring information, but it's letting viewers decide. Like, if I want to read something that's false, okay, let me do it, right? But in this factbook.org, the content is labeled clearly, and you can see, you know, you're being shown factually incorrect information. If you want factually correct, you know, if you can kind of click on the box and see why it was marked as factually incorrect. So that's an example of correcting the record. It's not taking the content down, but it's labeling it for what it is. Another example of correcting the record, okay, you'll hear about every once in a while Facebook, and they often really trumpet this, when they take down a whole slew of like fake accounts. So they pull them down, they'll make the news, yay, they're finally doing something. But when they take down these accounts, they could also proactively inform people who have followed, liked, and shared the content from these accounts and said, we, you know, say some message, we regret to inform you that this account, Heart of Texas, that you shared was actually a fake account. It's actually found to be a false account. Okay, it's another way of correcting the record. Another way is a concept known as algorithmic transparency. So remember those algorithm formulas? Right now, they're really very much black boxes, right? Like who the hell knows what's in there, right? Algorithmic transparency is examples of that would be providing explainers. What is the algorithm? Why am I being shown this? What is the algorithm? You know, what is it about me and what I look at that's making me see this? Another possibility would be user-controlled algorithms. I want to be shown content that, and I can tick the boxes, you know, meets these types of characteristics. What about, and another thing is, instead of attention algorithms, what if algorithms were about public service? What about doing good? We could certainly use that, right? So this is Facebook is programming this algorithm. There are lots of things you could do with it, but you know, no. So that's another part of correcting the record. There's also disinformation around, it's a part of the law, and more state law is around education and social media literacy and fact-checking stuff. There is, I'm just going to pass over this one quickly. Media Literacy Now is a fantastic website in terms of every different state and where your state law is for kids on your fact-checking, and not just media literacy, not just like, okay, we get content in all these different forms, but really starting to teach people from their beginning school years to look for to fact find, to actually follow the practices of fact checkers to see if the content they're looking at is real. And there's very good content that's being developed for this curriculum to be used, and but where are state laws around this and for including this type of stuff. All right, so that kind of took me to what was the end of the presentation. So we're almost there. This has been a lot of content. So coronavirus, all right. So fast forward, wow, how different life can be in a week. In the time that the coronavirus has become a reality, I mean, there was a big flurry of disinformation coming out of China, coming out of China's government, but around the coronavirus, especially as it started to move across Europe, and especially now that it's affecting us here in the United States, it's a storm of it, actually. But we do have some really good resources that I'll talk about. So we're seeing it, almost done. So we're seeing it in fake stuff around government shutdowns. Now, a lot of us, including where I am in New Rochelle, we're not supposed to go outside, but, you know, really trying to spread hysteria about, like, you're not gonna be let out of your house, right, type of thing. We're also seeing stuff around fake cures, right? There's Pastor Jim Baker there. That's not very nice of him. Selling fake cures for coronavirus. Really? Is a cure? Also amplifying the already craziness around the panic buying, you know, the paper towels, toilet paper stuff. But like there was a lot of stuff on WhatsApp that's happening around pushing stuff to further amplify shopping panics. This was something that happened in Holland, actually, in the Netherlands. So it's total outright panic buying, but it was like false information, right? So this is just, you know, some of the meat and potatoes main course of it. We're also seeing stuff like misinformation, right? So people share this, and I've seen friends share this stuff on Facebook. Misinformation, because we all want to know that something's going to help us, or since it's so hard to get a freaking test, that, you know, there are ways, but no, like the holding your breath thing is not. And there's also something going around lately about, like, you know, garlic heat ice cream. You can use these things to ward it off. No. Wikipedia, just so you know, has an entire page devoted to misinformation related to the 2019-20 coronavirus pandemic. It is really long for something that's relatively new, okay, the Wikipedia page. Clint Watts, who has done a ton of work and was one of the early people to start talking about what was going on in Russia back in 2015. Clint Watts, and there's a link to his article on the website, talks about like all these different types of actors who are pushing disinformation around the coronavirus and what some of their motives might be, how we're going to see it, and the effect of this information. Okay, so I'm not even going to go through this whole table. His article is really, really informative, and he walks through all this stuff. You know, as you're watching this, thing about disarming disinformation is knowing what it is and sharing that with our friends and not letting other people share it too, right? And it's kind of like we can each do our little part. Like we can each stay inside right now and not spread this virus, right? We cannot spread this. It can feel overwhelming, disinformation, but you know, we can each do our little part and get to know it better and have it lose its power. There are also amazing people. Jane Litvinenko has, I don't think she's gotten any sleep since the coronavirus hit the US shore. She's been endlessly, the BuzzFeed quotes that were on the BuzzFeed snippets that were on the previous slide were a part of a large article she's doing on disinformation and coronavirus. And she, you know, she's saying he's stuck and you bored at home. Learn how to do online verification. You can report stuff to her. You can, you know, send her an email and also DM her if you see stuff that looks fake. So how do I kind of know? The way I kind of get to know what's out there is I'll go look at these certain accounts right here. And they will often tell me about the disinformation that's happening right now. If there's something that I'm questioning, I'll go look and see what they're saying. And so there are links to these folks. They are really trustworthy sources, and these are people who spend days and hours and probably don't sleep looking this stuff up. Okay. Final note here is we're also seeing malinformation with the coronavirus. Remember, I started this by saying when we're in a panic, when we're feeling urgent, when we're spending way too much time probably in front of our computers, we are sitting ducks for scams and disinformation. And lately there's even been, there was malware infected pages. So if you click on it, or I think you had to download something actually, it would then infect your computer. Okay, this is like a whole other level of bad. All right, this is the cybersecurity end. But the takeaway from this stuff is really verify, verify, verify. You know, check the links. You know, if you want to share something that you've seen, just read it through, check the source. There's so much fake stuff, and it's so easy to make the fake stuff. The more kind of discerning we, you know, we can hone ourselves to be, the better chance we have of dispelling it. So that's about it. I've been talking for a long time. But I did leave a little time for questions.
Yeah, we had a couple questions come in. Jim asks, when media companies buy political ads, can they be reported for violating campaign finance regulations if their ad buy isn't disclosed?
Oh God, yeah, that's a whole gray area around that. There is like the Facebook ad library, so there's a little bit more transparency. That said, people can really hide, like some of these super PACs and stuff like that. They're set up to not disclose the real source. And a lot of the Trump ads, a lot of the Trump content that you'll see, it's hard to trace back, unfortunately. And there should be more regulation. Why isn't there the same amount of regulation over those ads on Facebook as there are on ads on television? That's a good question. And that's a good question for legislators.
And so Al asked, shouldn't we be doing some of the tactics that the right is doing, without completely misrepresenting? Could we use things like micro-targeting?
Totally. Totally.
We're that's part of what Demcast is all about, is to try to use some of this, do social media a little more organically, but try to target it to the places where people, need to get certain information, obviously without misrepresenting.
Here's the thing. In my day job, I work with nonprofits, okay? I help people do more with less. I encourage people to use tools like target ad. It's not like naughty tools. These are like advertising tools. We might as well target people. Indivisible New Rochelle ran an ad to get people, for census related things. Of course I was going to target certain neighborhoods, certain hard to count areas, right? So, yes, we need to be smarter about that. These are wonderful question, and we should get aggressive. Actually, it's not bad. We're using the tools that are out there.
Okay, and people have asked if we'll have this available. Yes, we're going to have it available. I will. It might take a few days for us to get it ready to share with you, but we've got the email addresses of everybody who registered, so we can send that out to you when it's ready.
Yeah, and the website, I constantly update it, and I do publish kind of little short articles when they're teachable moments, like when things happen out there, or and I'll often post them, and I actually Demcast I then send them over to Demcast, and Demcast publishes them too. The website itself is a good source of kind of information, and some of the background stuff you can find there, and some of the reference materials and links to people's work and stuff.
And if you, anyone who is joining us tonight is not part of Demcast already, we would love to have you join in. We're gonna, like I said at the top, we're gonna be doing more and more training sessions and webinars and things over the next few weeks. And we're gonna be doing things on like using Twitter as a political activist, things like that. So we'd love to have you join us at all of those as well. And you can just go to demcastusa.com and sign up for our email list. And we've got Facebook and Twitter and all of that, of course. So, so we'd love to have you join us there too. All right, Kim, did you have anything else?
Be safe, everyone. Be safe online and in the world. And I think here's like an informal polling question to anyone who's still there. So let's say this guy Fadi Quran, right, from Avaz. Now he was going to come over here, but travel plans have been interrupted. But say he is interested in doing some kind of disinformation campaign here around maybe 2020, probably something specific around the 2020 election stuff. Would people who are participating in this, or would people who have listened to this, be interested in being part of that kind of volunteer army and just looking out for stuff and sending people stuff, and kind of what Jane Litvinenko is asking people to do, right? But would people be interested in kind of being part of a anti-disinformation, army? I mean, not a full-time job, obviously.
Lots and lots.
We all have our day jobs, but we're all going to be spending a lot of time in front of our computers, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to get aggressive, and we need to be smart, and call it out, right? And like, for example, okay, here's a small example. So I think Demcast and Acronym have both come out with content around Donald Trump, it was just a few days ago, I think, like 10 days ago maybe, saying how the coronavirus is a Democrat hoax, right? There he is, right? That needs to be And it shouldn't come from the candidate, the Democrat candidate. It needs to come from the grassroots. Like, we're gonna let this guy get away with this crap? Really? Right? And now saying, oh, I called it I knew it before anyone, right? No. And so we need to be noisy, loud, and rude as well. So.
Yes, definitely. And, maybe Demcast can help coordinate too some of this anti-disinformation stuff. So if this is something you're interested in, anyone who's still on the call, certainly be in touch with us, and we can see how we can start to coordinate some of this stuff.
Yeah, and maybe Kelly, we can even think about some of this conversation with Fadi Quran if we are able to do that, given all the craziness right now.
We had someone ask that they've heard of seminars for seniors to help detect fake posts. Can we create some of those seminars? We'll look into that. I think that would be really useful. And of course, we all know a lot of people who are older who are now at home a lot more time and might have time to join a webinar. So we'll look into whether we can do something like that.
Yeah, here's the question for people, since you asked, and thank you for asking that. It's about practicing looking at it, right? Like, why do I get a gut sense that somebody's like a troll account? Because I've been like staring at this stuff a lot, right? So there are some quizzes and things like that, and I don't have them up now, but I can certainly put them up in the next day or so. And Kelly, we can also have show notes from this presentation available for people.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, and you can follow me. I'm actually I tweet under Indivisible New Rochelle, but you'll find Indivisible New Rochelle has a lot to say about disinformation, a lot, and other legislative things, but the Twitter account. So.
All right. Well, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but thank you. I'm thrilled with how many people signed in for this and joined us. And thank you so much, Kim, for this information. It was really, really fantastic presentation.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's always changing. So,
all right.
All righty.
Well, great. Thanks, everybody. And look for an email from us. Sorry, my cats are making noise out here. Look for an email from us in a few days with some of these links and show notes and the video.
All right.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Good night.
Cool. Yeah, stay safe. All right.